this over a pic. I just don't like you, prick. Thanks for dissing me. Now I had an excuse on the mic to write, not a light. But really, I don't care who's on the right. But you're losing the fight you pick. Who else wanted Kells? Attempt fails. Wake up.
And I can say that the entire world has been shocked by the atrocities of ISIS.
You tell the story about how you tried to find out what they call the Mossad when they deal with publicly?
I thought it was a reasonable question, but the trouble is you can't pick up the phone book. There's no Langley in Israel that you can look up, CIA, or in our case, the Mossad. We thought we should ask, what shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words, as I said, Mossad is institute, but when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. I mean, if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS.
Wake up.
We had helped to create the problem we're now fighting. How? Because when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan. And we were successful. Now you look back, the people we're fighting today, we were supporting in the fight against the Soviets.
Last night, on my orders, America's armed forces began strikes against ISIL targets in Syria.
U.S. counterterrorism officials asking, why are ISIS fighters driving so many similar trucks, and where are they getting them from?
How do we know that the arms that are going to the Syrian rebels are not going to get into the hands of ISIS?
Because if we had people who were there to funnel it to the right people, and I know these people, and I know who they are, and I know how to do it, and so do other people.
You are basically saying that even in government at the time, you knew those groups were around, you saw this analysis, and you were arguing against it, but who wasn't listening?
I think the administration.
Intelligence officials in Pakistan say a local commander from the terrorist network Islamic State has admitted receiving funds transferred via the U.S.
Today we learned that the same group may now be in possession of a deadly cache of American-made firepower, Stinger missiles.
I think it was a willful decision.
A willful decision to go support an insurgency that had Salafists, Al-Qaeda, and
a
Muslim
willful
Brotherhood.
decision to do what they're doing, which you'd have to really ask the president, what is it that he actually is doing?
As I've said before, this aspect of our strategy was moving too slowly, but the fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar province. We're speeding up training of ISIL forces. We're speeding up training of ISIL forces. We're speeding up training of ISIL forces.
בכל העניינים. מה שישראל לאחרונה ניתצו כמה עניינים. התפתחו כמה. מה שלא יאות, וגם משהו שעדיין משיח ליבו. אז אולי תעשו משהו ומה ידיעתו. ועושים. הכנראה שהיא מספיק, כי היום כבר שוד, כמה שוד בגיל ועדיין ליבו, אבל יש עוד כמה שעות, אבל יש להשתדל גם היום, בצורה טובה. זה שמחה וטוב לבוא. אתה יודע שחסידים מקפידים שכל נאמין לי את שמחה. תודה טובה, הצלחה רבה.
Now, U.S. military aircraft have dropped ammunition in areas held by ISIL terror group in Iraq. Now, according to volunteer forces who are fighting the terrorists, American helicopters dropped boxes of weapons in Yathrib and Balad districts in the Salahuddin province.
We now hear that President Obama will ask Congress for $5.3 billion to equip and train Iraqi soldiers and quote-unquote moderate Syrian rebels to fight the Islamic State militants.
Reports say the U.S. military has airdropped weapons for the ISIL on several occasions.
Last month, I ordered our military to take targeted action against ISIL to stop its advances. Last month, I ordered our military to take targeted action against ISIL to stop its advances.
We're speeding up training of ISIL forces. We're speeding up training of ISIL forces.
Do you know that he made the Air Force drop leaflets telling the ISIS truck drivers to get out, that bombs were going to fall? Did you know that? Does anyone know that he did that? This is going to make people think twice about this guy. This is not as clear as it may be of he's just a pacifist or a liberal. There's something more here, Donald.
Unclassified reports have estimated that in just the first 12 months of renewed ISIS operations in Syria and Iraq, they've recruited more than 22,000 foreign fighters. At least 4,000 are Westerners. So those are Americans, Brits, French citizens, German citizens.
It was very disturbing to pull this from the UN website in September that says of the 381,412 arrivals that came across the Mediterranean Sea just this year up to September, that 15% were children, 13% were women, and 72% were men.
Such a backlash against Syrian refugees coming to the United States after the word that some of these attackers may have passed through Syria. 31 governors now say they don't want them living in their states. Many presidential candidates calling for a ban or religious tests. Congress moving for a moratorium on new refugees.
We don't have the systems in place on the ground to collect the information to vet. That would be the concern.
Yes, I think that's the challenge we're all talking about, is that we can only query against that which we have collected.
You can't account for what you don't know, and that goes to the intelligence deficit that I think is embedded in your question.
People who were there to funnel it to the right people, and I know these people, and I know who they are, and I know how to do it, and so do other people.
You are basically saying that even in government at the time, you knew those groups were around, you saw this analysis, and you were...
We're speeding up training of ISIL forces.
ISIS has been a main concern of the U.S. through just this sort of radicalization. Not directed plots, but people who follow ISIS propaganda through their relentless outpouring of propaganda around the world every day.
In June 2015, Iraqi officials reported that as many as 500 children were kidnapped by ISIS to serve as suicide bombers and child soldiers.
Anybody who had a chance to see those kids, hopefully you understood the degree to which they're just like our kids.
New Islamic State video shows boy soldier execute 2 alleged Russian spies.
Long way from when you described them as a JV team. Was that bad intelligence or your misjudgment?
Keep in mind, I wasn't specifically referring to ISIL.
As I've said before, this aspect of our strategy was moving too slowly, but the fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces.
הדבר העיקרי הוא קודם כל לתת להם מכות, לא רק מכות כל כך מכינות, שהמחיר יהיה כבד מצום. כרגע המחיר לא כבד מצום. ההתקפה רבת היקף ברשות הפלסטינית. תביא אותם לפחד שהכל מתמוטט.
רגע, אבל אז השוק העולם יגיד מה אתם חושבים?
Checked it out. It was. You know, we were all on edge, obviously, so I really wasn't looking to make friends with these people, and neither were the officers that I were with. Once we started talking to them, you know, they were pretty much like, hey, we're not against you, we're with you.
And word late tonight that 2 suspects are in FBI custody after a truckload of explosives was discovered around the George Washington Bridge. That bridge links New York to New Jersey over the Hudson River. Whether the discovery of those explosives has anything to do with other events today is unclear. The FBI has 2 suspects in hand, said the truck load of explosives, enough explosives were in the truck to do great damage to the George Washington Bridge. But they arrested the 2 suspects and they're questioning them as we speak. President Bush says the death toll at the World Trade Center and today's other targets is in the thousands.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of MOSSAD. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
The 5 Israelis were detained for 10 weeks and finally deported on immigration violations after the FBI cleared them of any involvement in 9/11.
The US has been sharing unfiltered intelligence with Israel, including the private data of American citizens. According to a confidential document that was part of whistleblower Edward Snowden's leaks, it shows that Washington set no limits as to how its ally could use the information. RT's Paula Smear joins me live from Tel Aviv. Paula, tell us more about what's in this leak.
Well, what we're talking about here is a top-secret 5-page memorandum of understanding that lays out all the details of intelligence sharing between the NSA and its Israeli counterpart. What it does reveal is that the NSA routinely shared raw intelligence with Israel without first sifting this information to remove information that was inside relating to American citizens. It states that Israel is allowed to receive raw intelligence signal. It includes unevaluated and unminimized transcripts, gist, faxes, telex, voice and digital network intelligence, metadata and content. And that is a quote. At the same time, the agreement places no legally binding limits on the use of the data by the Israelis. So while the memorandum does say that the material has to be handled in accordance with US law, and at the same time the Israelis have agreed not to deliberately target Americans who are identified in the data, there is no kind of legal obligation to back up these claims. In this respect, what it reads is that the agreement is not intended to create any legally enforceable rights. It is not an international agreement and it is not legally binding. It also says that the Israelis were required to destroy upon recognition any communication that is either to or from an official in the US government. This includes the White House, cabinet departments, the House of Representatives and the Senate, amongst others.
Paula, has there been any reaction from the NSA over these revelations?
Well, the NSA so far has declined to answer specific questions about this agreement. An NSA spokesperson has said that the agency insists that the shared intelligence complies with all laws governing privacy. There was a statement that they did release, and in that statement they said, and again I'm quoting, "We are not going to comment on any specific information sharing arrangements or the authority under which any such information is collected. The fact that intelligence services work together under specific and regulated conditions mutually strengthens the security of both nations. So that has been their formal response.
But the NSA scandal, it just seems to run and run, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I mean, we're looking at a scandal that has at its heart Edward Snowden, this 30-year-old former National Security Agency contractor who made public documents that show that the NSA and its international partners conducted mass surveillance of foreign nationals and US citizens. Certainly, these documents continue to be an embarrassment both to the NSA and the American government.
Paula, thanks very much indeed for that. That's RT's Paula Sear live there in Tel Aviv.